We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Be able to see the shuttle launch in a special programme on BBC One at 2:40 tomorrow afternoon. Top Gear returns to your screens with a brand new series, so turn on for all the very latest in motorcar design and technology.
Solved, the weather has improved, and the order has been given to start pumping fuel into the shuttle's rockets. The 5-man crew will be the first Americans in space since 7 astronauts were killed in the Challenger disaster of 1986. NASA said tonight it's been a long 2.5 years.
With everything now looking set for a launch tomorrow, NASA have just rolled back the service gantry to reveal Discovery poised and ready to fly.
And tomorrow, the shuttle should return to its proper place in the sky and launch us into a new era.
3, 2,
A successful launch of a weather balloon today, predicting perfect conditions, a far cry from that freezing January day in 1986, which led to the Challenger disaster. The voice of Dick Scobie, the commander of Challenger, and this last message from the doomed shuttle.
Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
A few seconds later, the shuttle blew apart, stunning the crowd who were watching and a nation that was left to mourn 7 dead astronauts.
To those they left behind, the mothers, the fathers,
the president led the nation in mourning.
Dick Scobie knew that every launching of a space shuttle is a technological miracle. And he said, if something ever does go wrong, I hope that doesn't mean the end to the space shuttle program.
That was a horrible, frozen moment in time for me.
For June Scobie, the widow of the Challenger commander, and the other relatives, tomorrow will be a difficult time, a time of sorrow, a time of memories.
So this was a happy day for them when they were...
There are hundreds of official photographs like this, but the most treasured of all, those that June Scobie took herself at a private picnic for the Challenger astronauts and their families just before the flight.
Now, no one's ever seen these pictures before, so this is Marcia and Greg Jarvis, and they're having fun. They had a wonderful sense of humor and always having a good time. Ellison Onizuka and Lorna Onizuka. Up here is Steve and Krista McAuliffe, and we're all teasing and joking with one another. This is outside again with Steve and Krista. They're talking to Dick, and he said he was nervous talking to the commander. Teasing. Ron and Cheryl McNair, and that's Dick off in the background watching all this. Jane and Mike Smith, and toying around and teasing each other. Judy Resnick and her good friend.
That's right. Yeah.
And then after this picnic, Dick and I took a walk along the beach.
Oh, wow.
So, by ourselves for a long time.
The last few minutes alone together, they said goodbye, and Dick Scobie took his crew away to prepare for Challenger's flight. And despite the painful memories, his widow will be watching Discovery lift off.
And I have put a lot of thought into it, and I've made the decision that those are my friends aboard Discovery, and I'll be glued to the TV set just like every American and everyone around the world who is interested in seeing those people get launched and off into a new era of safe space flight.
And Ken Rees joins us live now from the launch site at Kennedy Space Center. Ken, what's the atmosphere and mood like there?
Well, the atmosphere and mood are excited, electric, and very much upbeat. There's a great sense that tomorrow is going to be a tremendous day for NASA. Those last-minute snags that you mentioned have been ironed out successfully. Just about 3 miles from here, I can see Discovery sitting there on the launch pad, looking absolutely ready. All systems are go here.
Focus of attention principally on the 5 astronauts. Just what are they doing now?
Well, we heard from Rick Hawke just a little while after NASA announced that everything was perfect. He's not a man noted for his excitement, but he said he was absolutely elated. And in fact, the crew and their families are now at that private beach house, the one we saw there with Mrs. Scobie, and they too are enjoying that last intimate few moments together, a picnic and a chance to say goodbye before the crew leave for the mission early tomorrow morning.
Indeed, Ken will be with you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
And you can all watch the launch of Discovery live from Cape Canaveral in a special ITN programme tomorrow. That's the launch of the Space Shuttle on ITV starting at 10 to 3 tomorrow afternoon.
The heavily modified craft called Discovery, with its 5 astronauts, is scheduled to lift off at 2:59 our time tomorrow afternoon. It'll be a 4-day flight, and the astronauts' main task will be to launch a communication satellite. From Cape Canaveral, Tim Sebastian reports on the preparations.
Discovery is now firmly under starter's orders, emerging tonight from its protective steel girdle and ready for flight. The future of NASA is being bet on this launch, the most crucial in a quarter of a century. The cold feet at the space agency are thinly disguised.
Nervous, excited, yeah. And I'm really looking forward to a good countdown and safe launch. Really am.
Right up until the last moment, there have been questions about the booster rockets which failed on Challenger. Contract engineers brought in by the manufacturers Morton Thiokol have told the FBI that some of their safety concerns were ignored. The company says that's not true.
The FBI, we are told, is looking into some allegations by these people, but the FBI have also said that if they had uncovered anything that was a safety factor, they would have already turned it over to NASA. They have not. I think that says a lot.
What it does say is that after a 2.5-year rebirth, much longer than anyone had expected, NASA does not go gently into this launch. But there's a backlog of work that this space truck must carry out. Scientific experiments left undone, spy satellites left in the hangar. So much, in fact, is riding on this launch that NASA has introduced stringent safety guidelines. And if the weather here, now so changeable, does not conform to the new standards, they'll stop the countdown and make no apologies. If necessary, they're prepared to disappoint an expected million visitors now streaming into the area. Americans believe they're ready to fly again and regain their leadership in space.
Tim Sebastian reporting from Cape Canaveral. Tomorrow's will be the 26th shuttle launch, but it's attracting as much attention as the first, because what it represents is America's attempt to relaunch a dream.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the...
It was a dream shattered on that January day 2.5 years ago. Challenger's destruction laid low America's technology and pride, and it bewildered millions of Americans used to success.
Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye, and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
A second major failure really would pull out the consensus behind the program. If after 32 months the organization cannot get this piece of equipment ready to fly successfully, it's hard to be credible that it can do anything else, that it continue to take large amounts of money, be charged with major future missions. So I think it's absolutely essential that there's a success.
The inquiry that followed the disaster was exhaustive and damning. America's space agency and its industrial partners were hammered for taking shortcuts in order to keep their shuttle flying. And as NASA set to work to make this next shuttle, Discovery, plant America squarely back on the road to manned space travel, the order went out to the technical men, never again. Now, after more than 2 years of painstaking redesign and a bill of $2.4 billion, they've wheeled out a shuttle in which every major system has been taken apart and literally hundreds of detailed changes have been made. On the booster rockets alone, there are 145 modifications. Most important of all, the improved O-rings that seal the booster segments, whose failure last time caused the disaster. There are 30 changes to the shuttle's main engines. And on the space vehicle itself, there are 220 changes, including the provision of a hatch that'll blow off in an emergency and allow the astronauts to escape down a slide if the shuttle's still on the ground and out on a pole if they're in mid-air. All these new items have been rigorously tested on the ground, but all have yet to pass the ultimate test of being launched into space. And NASA have designated nearly 1,500 parts they call Criticality 1 items that have no backup in case of disaster.
If the shuttle does blow up on this launch attempt, then it will probably sound the death knell on the whole shuttle program, and it will be cancelled outright. And it will probably bring the curtain down on American manned spaceflight activity for at least the next 10 years.
Moreover, the shuttle's 2-year absence has given a new lease of life to the old unmanned expendable launchers like America's Titan. An exasperated Pentagon has now reordered 24 of these 30-year-old rockets. The old Delta rocket, too, has been given a facelift and has since carried 4 shuttle-style payloads into space. And America's Atlas has been brought out of storage to make 7 successful launches so far. And these old-style rockets are proving cheaper, too, 1/3 the cost of a shuttle. Europe's Ariane has cashed in on the shuttle's discomfort. The program has been upped to 10 planned launches next year. And even the Chinese, with their economy-class Long March rocket, are offering cut-price launches way below any conceivable shuttle price.
Where we were anticipating flying around 60 missions a year when the program began in the early 70s, even before Challenger, the highest estimate was around 15 to 20 flights a year. At those kind of rates, it's not cost-effective, it's very expensive. The American taxpayer was subsidizing it to the tune of about $100 million per shot compared to the price that was being charged for customers, so that it could be competitive with those more conventional and actually more economical launchers.
But the shuttle does have one thing going for it. The joint American-European manned space station is still intended to be the crowning spectacular of the shuttle program. A great laboratory and parking lot floating in space, a jumping-off point for further space travel in the 21st century. But the space station can only be transported, built and manned with the help of the shuttle.
The shuttle is vital to carry men and supplies up and down from that space station, which will be assembled at the end of the 1990s in space. And so it's pivotal, it's a key element in not only the space programs of the United States, but now of the entire free world.
The white elephant we have to have is perhaps the way of describing it. For the short-term activities, NASA absolutely has to have the shuttle, and a successful shuttle, and a shuttle which is operating as many times a year as it can be successfully managed. But it is not the vehicle they really need at this time.
Meanwhile, the Soviets have been forging ahead. Of the 120 launches this year, 100 were Russian. Their launch rate leaves the Americans far behind. And their successful unmanned launch vehicle program is now about to be boosted by their own shuttle, carried on the huge Energia rocket. This gigantic vehicle is intended to carry either an American-style shuttle or an unmanned payload of up to 200 tons, which will be 10 times heavier and thus a lot cheaper than what America's Discovery can put into space. Many experts say America too should have invested in this flexibility by making themselves a huge Energia-type rocket. At the moment, America's big booster is at least 10 years away, while the shuttle eats up the resources that might have been spent on other programs like this.
In history, I think it will be regarded as an unfortunate deflection down a lay-by, as it were, into a lay-by. If the Americans had been able to keep their other programs going and keep control of the shuttle down to what it was originally intended to be, it would have been different.
Flawed concept or no, the shuttle awaits its final countdown at Cape Canaveral tonight. It represents an unprecedented investment of technical skill and hard cash by an organization that knows its future depends on Discovery's success. A powerful investment, too, in restoring America's pride.
And right now, at Cape Canaveral, with the countdown clock right behind him, is John Pike, one of America's leading space experts. John Pike, good evening.
Good afternoon.
People at Cape Canaveral tonight, are they noticeably more nervous than they've been at other space flights before this?
No, I was down here for the first launch of the shuttle and the third one, and I think that actually there's a much higher level of confidence here today than there was on the eve of the first shuttle launch. Despite the loss of the Challenger, we've seen that the vehicle can fly, and I think that most of the people that I've talked with are confident that we're going to see a successful mission tomorrow.
So how would you calculate the risks involved in tomorrow's flight? Very low, and where are they?
Well, I'd say that the risk tomorrow is probably as low as it's ever going to be on the shuttle. Unfortunately, given the complexity of the machine, it's very difficult to calculate precisely what the risk is. Prior to the Challenger accident, some people were saying 1 in 100,000. Now some people are saying 1 in 25. I guess my own guess is 1 in a few hundred.
How would you describe what's at stake tomorrow? What matters about this shuttle succeeding?
Well, very clearly, if this launch or any launch over the next several years results in the sort of catastrophe we saw in the Challenger accident, I think the future of the shuttle program, quite possibly the future of the American manned space program, and as a result, our space program as a whole, is clearly going to be called into question. On the other hand, a successful launch tomorrow is certainly going to go a long way towards exorcising the image of the Challenger accident, and a series of successful launches over the next couple of years hopefully would restore confidence in the shuttle and restore confidence in NASA to administer the space program.
Now, Mr. Pike, we've been hearing quite a lot just now about what people have described as the flawed concept of the shuttle, the thing being wholly misconceived, uneconomic, and so on. Now, do you take that position? Do you think that it, and indeed the space station beyond it, really are a fundamental mistake?
Well, I think it's very clear that starting in 1972, up to the time of the Challenger accident, that NASA was clearly overselling the shuttle, that they were over-optimistic about how frequently it would fly and what the economics of operating it would be. On the other hand, my suspicion is that in the wake of the Challenger accident, perhaps people are being a little too pessimistic. At this point, we simply don't have enough data to say, can the shuttle fly 8 times a year or 16 times a year? Are we going to lose one every several dozen or one every several hundred? If it turns out that the shuttle can fly 16 times a year and fly at that rate safely, you look at the numbers and it turns out that the shuttle is going to be quite economically competitive with expendable launch vehicles. On the other hand, if the pessimists are right and it's only flying 8 times a year, then quite clearly it's going to be much more expensive than the other alternatives. And the bottom line at this point is that it's going to take a couple of years of actual flight experience with this redesigned shuttle in order to be able to answer those important questions.
Now, assuming success tomorrow, where does this put America vis-a-vis the Russians? Where are the two big contestants in the space race?
Well, it's very difficult to assess who's ahead because it's hard to say what the race is about. In the 60s, it was clear that there was a race to the moon and the United States won it. Today, if the race is how many rockets you're launching, the Russians are ahead. If it's how long your satellites last, we're ahead. If it's how many satellites you have operating, we're even. If it's how many channels of television you're getting off your satellites, clearly the United States is far ahead of the Soviet Union. So I think on the whole, it's difficult to say that one side or the other is ahead, except in the sense that the Soviet Union seems to have a much clearer idea about its long-range goals in space than the United States does.
John Pike, thank you very much indeed. Fingers crossed for tomorrow, and just 16 hours to go.
Flights. But officials at the Kennedy Space Center know that NASA cannot afford another major failure.
Discovery is under starter's orders, cleared last night for final countdown. 32 months since the Challenger accident, and the future of the manned space program will ride with this shuttle. NASA has been purged and battered. It won't launch unless conditions are perfect.
You ought to be proud that that's our rules, frankly, because it's too important. As important as it is to get the shuttle airborne, it's too important to break one of those particular rules.
And the rules are NASA's only insurance policy. The Americans who are streaming in their thousands into the area expect results for their money. They've come to see the most expensive piece of hardware the nation possesses, and in a few hours' time, they'll want to see it fly.
And you can see the launch of the Space Shuttle live on a special programme on BBC One this afternoon, beginning at 2.
A very good morning to you. Well, I think the winds are very critical for the shuttle launch. Northeasterlies 12 to 15 miles an hour, so we hope it gets away all right, but it is on the borderline, certainly.
covering system, but the weather is proving more intractable. Surface winds are too strong, winds in the upper atmosphere too light. Flight controllers are considering resetting the onboard computers to take account of conditions, but so far the shuttle will be delayed an hour, possibly more.
79 minutes to blast off. Ashdown launches Democrat bid for a less greedy, greener world. And breakdown for double gold Flojo. Break up for Daly's decathlon bid. Good afternoon. The launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery has been delayed by an hour because of high winds. But for the moment, the countdown towards the first manned American spaceflight in 2.5 years is still on. NASA has warned, however, that the launch could be put back further if the weather doesn't improve. The countdown was also interrupted for a time this morning because of problems with Discovery's onboard engines. Blastoff is now due at 3:59 our time this afternoon. If everything goes according to plan, exactly 2 minutes and 4 seconds after launch, the solid rocket boosters will separate off. 8.5 minutes into the flight, the main engine shut off and the main fuel tank is jettisoned. At just under 40 minutes, the shuttle powers into its final orbit, 160 miles above the Earth. And 6.25 hours into the flight, Discovery is due to put a billion-pound satellite, the biggest ever, into orbit, to confirm that the United States is back in the space race 2.5 years after the Challenger disaster.
We were in an extended 3-hour build-in hold. Originally it was a 2-hour one, and we extended it to 3.
It's been a morning of intense frustration for NASA. The shuttle is ready to fly despite a snag with an auxiliary engine this morning. The weather looks perfect, but it isn't. To the dismay of the weathermen, a test balloon flown early this morning has revealed that the winds at 30,000 feet and above are much lighter than normal and coming from a different direction. Weeks ago, the shuttle was programmed to deal with the expected wind strength and direction. The crew can only sit it out and wait, Rick Hawke and his team looking as frustrated as you might expect. And so far, the news from the weather experts isn't very encouraging.
Weather, as everyone knows, can change rapidly, but what the weather forecasters tell us is that the winds aloft at 30,000 feet are not as likely to change rapidly as winds on the surface are. So I think what we're looking at is, can we live with the winds they are, or is there something else we can do?
So far, the crew's day has been normal, starting with an early breakfast, and they're still working towards a launch. NASA can reprogram the computers on board for the weather, but not, it's feared, during the 3 or 4 hours left in the launch window. Meanwhile, an estimated 1 million people who've driven to the area, hoping for a glimpse of this first liftoff in 2.5 years, can only wait with everyone else. Among them, a British couple.
Our friends saw the last one and the one before that, but this is the first one we've ever seen, you know.
We know all about it in England, though. Yeah. We have it on the TV and the newscasts.
Yeah,
A few minutes ago, cheered on by NASA workers, Captain Hawke and his crew walked out, retracing the footsteps of their colleagues on the ill-fated Challenger. They're still getting ready for a launch, but increasingly it seems the weather may force a delay.
Well, now let's go live to Ken Rees at Cape Canaveral. Ken, any last-minute further information?
Well, our understanding, John, is that the countdown is still continuing, which means that NASA are still considering this weather question very, very carefully. Like the man said, they really have got to make a decision now. Can they live with those winds up there, or are they going to have to reprogram the computers? And if so, we're talking about tomorrow. So NASA, tremendous tension here among the people of NASA. Of course, a bitter disappointment to their hopes of a speedy and absolutely flawless launch. We'll just have to wait and see.
Ken, we saw the couple from the north of England there. It's evident that there are plenty of tourists flocking in there. Is there quite a circus surrounding this launch? Obviously, it is a very special one.
Well, old hands here tell me, John, that there are more people here than maybe even for the first launch of a shuttle. There are said to be over 1 million people out there. We are among the fortunate few, the journalists who've been allowed in here. There are 1,000 of us in this compound able to see the launch from only 3 miles away. That's compared to about 4,000 who wanted to get in. Outside the gates, traffic jams everywhere. We had to get up at 3 o'clock this morning even to get here in time to talk to you now. And of course, as you will recall, the tremendous emotion that shook America when Challenger blew up, that there's another kind of emotion now. People are waiting for this launch.
Ken Rees, thank you very much, and if there's any further news on that, we'll be back to you there at Cape Canaveral. With me now in the studio is Colonel Jack Lousmer, one of America's most senior astronauts and a former shuttle commander. Jack, from what we can tell, it's those high-altitude winds. Do you suspect anything else is afoot?
No, that's what the holdup is right now. The computer is programmed for high-level winds. They're much lower than they are at this time of the season. This computer program controls the gimbaling and the surfaces so that it doesn't overstress the vehicle when it goes up. They can't be reprogrammed before the launch window closes, so they're sending up more balloons, and they may delay another hour while they send another balloon. So,
well, now here's the picture right at Cape Canaveral as we speak. Just talk us through, supposing this launch goes ahead on time, I mean on the time that they've said, 3:59, what are the critical moments from here on? Here are those booster rockets on the side.
We're looking at the bottom side of the shuttle. It's on the other side. The first critical event, of course, is the separation of the solid rocket boosters at 2 minutes and 4 seconds. A big cloud of smoke and fire around the cockpit as the jettison motors fire to separate those. They parachute in the ocean so they can be used again. And the shuttle continues on up into orbit with the 3 liquid hydrogen and oxygen engines on the back end until we get to the next major event, which is the shutdown of the engines at 8 minutes and 31 seconds, and the separation during an 18-second period of the external fuel tank. It'll then go through a big parabolic trajectory and break up and hit in the ocean. The space shuttle will then continue up to its apogee of 160 miles, but it has to fire its own engines on board to circularize that orbit, and that'll be about 40 minutes after liftoff. And then it's in its circular orbit. And the first major event after that, then, of course, is to launch the satellite, 6 hours and 15 minutes.
Right. Now, just returning then to the launch pad in Cape Canaveral, what is going on in that cockpit? Are the chaps aboard now?
Yes, we saw the van take them out to the launch pad not long ago. They enter down here and go to an elevator that takes them up to a swing arm. And there's a room that's joining the shuttle hatch. There will be 2 or 3 people up there to help them get in. There will be another astronaut who will help them get strapped into their seats, 5 of them, and then we'll close the hatch and everybody will leave.
Here they are actually getting on board, so they've just come out of that little room you were talking about, right?
Yes, they've come up the elevator, and they're going to walk across this swing arm to the little white room that encloses the hatch of the shuttle.
Well, that's it, Jack. Let's leave them there as they board the shuttle. ITN will be bringing you the latest news on the shuttle in a special program starting at 10 to 3 this afternoon. That'll be an update of the latest position, and they'll bring you the live blast-off if and when it happens. At the moment, 3:59.
And finally, back to the launch of the American Space Shuttle Discovery and to the latest pictures we've had from Cape Canaveral. The astronauts left on the 9-mile drive to the shuttle launch site just over half an hour ago. They'd been due to take off at 3 o'clock our time, but the launch has been delayed by an hour until 4 o'clock because of problems with the weather. The astronauts are now starting an elaborate procedure of last-minute checks, and the countdown is underway. It's America's first manned spaceflight since the Challenger disaster nearly 3 years ago. And we all wish them the best of luck. There'll be more on those stories in our later programmes, and the shuttle launch live on BBC 2 from 20 to 4 this afternoon. Meantime, you've been watching the 1 o'clock news from the BBC. Good afternoon.
To you from Cape Canaveral. Unfortunately, we would have been able to bring you the launch in about 20 minutes. That won't now be the case. NASA has delayed, ironically, because of good weather, not bad, as you can probably see behind me. This is the first time that something like this has afflicted a shuttle launch. What's happened is that the high-altitude winds are much lighter than the space shuttle can cope with. Its computers have been programmed to deal with much heavier winds. This is not now the case. What's happened is that NASA has sent up extra weather balloons to check on the prospects for a launch later today. We still don't know what the results are. We still don't know whether, in fact, Discovery is going to get off. Meanwhile, though, the preparations are continuing. The shuttle is in good shape, and the astronauts are going about their normal duties pre-launch.
Commander Rick House, pilot.
Despite the delay, the 5 astronauts made their way out to the launch pad this morning, aware that they might not be flying at all. NASA had worked all night to fix last-minute problems on Discovery itself, but the weather proved more intractable. The surface winds are too high, the higher winds are too weak. The astronauts will not go unless conditions are perfect. A short time ago, NASA's chief administrator, James Fletcher, was asked how important today's mission was.
Awfully important. We've waited 2.5 years. We've fixed everything we know how to fix. The team is ready. The shuttle is in good shape. The probability of its working is very high. And if it doesn't work, that would be a major disaster for NASA. But it'll work.
You don't think you're being overly cautious?
No, I don't think so, and especially not on this first flight. It's important that there be a minimum of anomalies on this first flight. And we may relax some of the paperwork a little bit for succeeding flights, but not really the constraints. We'll keep those indefinitely.
James Fletcher of NASA there. Well, with me at the Cape is John Pike from the Federation of American Scientists, an expert on the shuttle. John, how serious a setback is this delay?
Well, it's certainly a disappointment to NASA. They were hoping to fly without a hitch this morning. On the other hand, it doesn't indicate that there's anything mechanically wrong with the shuttle. So I think eventually they'll be getting off, if not today, probably tomorrow.
They're playing it extra safe this time, aren't they?
Well, certainly after the Challenger accident, the margin of error here is such that they're just not going to be taking any chances.
Why do light winds matter? This seems an extraordinary problem for this shuttle. Very sophisticated technology, very expensive, the best piece of hardware that America has. Why does it be affected by light winds?
Well, to explain what's happening with the shuttle here, the computer was programmed under the assumption that they were going to be getting a lot of wind from the back, tailwinds of several hundred miles an hour, hurricane force winds. In reality, what's happening is that they aren't getting those tailwinds, and so the shuttle is going to be flying with an attitude such that these forward structures on the wings would be getting a tremendous amount of pressure, possibly leading to breaking off some of the insulation, and could result in the loss of the vehicle. The problem is that they have the shuttle programmed for the direction that the winds generally blow in the winter, and in fact the winds are blowing in the opposite direction.
John Pike, thank you very much indeed. Difficult to explain that there's a problem here when the weather is so nice, but we are, as I said earlier, in a holding pattern. We will, of course, update you on the progress of the shuttle in our bulletins later on this afternoon, but for now, back to Desmond Lynam in the Olympic Grandstand studio.
Well, that's good. I might just put a little moustache on there. Des is waiting. You'll see him tonight. 32 months since the last shuttle launch. That's hard to believe.